I finally did it. I finally filmed an actual example video of me doing one of these Toastmasters roles that for years I've sat here and talked and explained how to do the role, but it's hard if you don't have the actual visual example. So I've gone out and filmed myself doing the grammarian role, and in this video you're going to see the actual in-person presentation at my Toastmasters Club where I take on the grammarian role. And in between those video clips, I'm going to give a little bit of commentary of what things I did well and perhaps what things I could have done better. Hey everyone, my name is Wade Patterson. I am passionate, so passionate about impactful communication. Communication is such an important part of our lives. Therefore, if communication is something that you want to improve upon, which it should be because it's such an important part of life, consider subscribing to my channel. I put out a ton of video content with the goal of making you not only a better public speaker, but a better communicator in general. So as I mentioned, I finally did it. I shot an example video. This one is of the grammarian role. It's in two different parts. So in our club, the grammarian comes in near the beginning of the meeting to explain the role and introduce a word of the day that club members are encouraged to use throughout the meeting. The second part comes at the end of the meeting in the evaluation section where the grammarian talks about how many people use the word of day and points out some examples of great use of language and opportunities where people could have improved upon the language that they used. Let's take a look at my first video as the grammarian. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests, and all of those joining us on Zoom. The role of the grammarian has two parts. Part number one is to choose a word of the day, which you will see around the room, and the word I have chosen today is bilious. And my favorite part about the word bilious is the first definition, which is sickeningly unpleasant to look at. How does that tie into winter activities? I woke up in the morning, looked out the window at the bilious snow on my driveway. I'll be keeping track of anyone who uses this word and the frequency of how often you use the word throughout the meeting. The second part of the grammarian is to keep an ear out for great uses of language and opportunities where better, more emphatic words could have been used throughout the meeting. I'll come back in the second half to deliver my report. Thank you. So there you go. That is the first little snippet of an example video from me doing a Toastmasters role. And overall, I have to say I was fairly happy with how that went over. There were two things that I noticed could have been improved. And by the way, give me your feedback. I'd love you to let me know in the comments if I could have improved upon more things. But the two things I think I really could have improved upon, there was an opportunity to let humor sink in a little bit more. So sometimes after I said something that got a bit of laughter, I rushed on to the next thing. And as a great public speaker, when you say something funny, it's an important skill to pause, allow the laughter to happen, don't cut it off, and then continue afterward. I could have improved there. The second area I think I could have improved was saying thank you as a handoff instead of thank you, Madam Toastmaster, which would have been a bit more appropriate. But overall, you get a sense of me doing the initial part of the grammarian role. I introduced a word of the day, I explained the role, so I was pretty happy with how I took on this role. So as I mentioned, fast forward toward the end of the meeting, I have to give my recap. How did I do there? Let's take a look. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests, and everyone on Zoom. Looking at the word of the day usage list halfway through the meeting, it was bilious. Sue was the only person who had used the word, and she used the word before I even came up. Apparently Wendy used it. Allegedly, I didn't catch that one. However, the good news is, as the meeting went on, it was used more. In fact, Bonnie used it, Dan used it, yes, Wendy used it. Later on, I did have that one, and Kenny used it as well. So pretty good all in all. And there was other great uses of language as well. Wendy started off the meeting early talking about feeling the magic in the air with the snow. She said hideous and bilious, which I thought was a good additional word to add on there. Fahad had a great line, never let the flame of hope go out in your life. I thought that was very powerful. Margaret and Kenny both used the word scoop up as much snow as possible, and I thought that was effective rather than just say pick up as much snow as possible. Kenny, I didn't catch the full descriptive name of your invented sport, but I wish I had, because that was an incredible use of language. And Sid perhaps wins the award for most creative word of Shepmas, which is incredible. The one piece of improvement advice was for Dan early on, who said the theme of the evening, it is 7 a.m. in the morning, it is not evening. Great meeting. So there you have it. There was the second part of my grammarian role, and I want to address a couple things that happened because I wasn't quite as happy with how I delivered that section. So I want to point out a few areas I could have improved. But before I do that, I want to note one thing that did happen during that grammarian report, and that was a distraction. So at some point I had mentioned that not many people at the beginning of the meeting used the word of the day, which was bilious. However, a distraction took place. Somebody in the crowd yelled that Wendy had used the word, and there was a bit of confusion. Now, when this distraction happens, you as the speaker have two options of how to address it. Option number one is to ignore it. So I could have just allowed the comment to go and not addressed it. Or the second option, which is the one I chose in this instance, is to address it head on, which I did. I made a comment or a joke about how, I didn't catch that one from Wendy that was early in the meeting. But then as I went further through, I did mention that I did eventually catch Wendy saying the word of the day. That's one note I want to address because distractions can really derail you as a new speaker because it goes against what you've been planning. So remember, you always have two options when a distraction happens, either address it or ignore it completely. There were a couple ways I could have improved this grammarian report, in my opinion. The first was the pronunciation of bilious. I mispronounced it at some point. With that said, I kept going. I didn't let that get me off track. I mispronounced it, I corrected myself, and I kept going. The second thing I could have done a little bit better was not switching back and forth from second to third person. This is something I struggle with so often in evaluations, and the right way to do it is to address people in third person only. Therefore, I talk about Wendy doing something well, or I talk about Sue doing something well. And by using third person, all of us in the club benefit from that information. But when you switch to second person, which is the word you, it's almost like you're having a one-on-one conversation with one individual. The downside of that is not everyone feels like they're benefiting off of that information because it seems like you're just addressing one person. No matter whether you do your evaluation in third person or second person, which I really think you should do it in third person, the key is to not bounce back and forth between you and the person's name, which I did in this evaluation. So slap on the wrist, I need to do better next time. Another way I could have improved this evaluation was again with the sign off. I said something awkward like, great meeting, and walked off the stage. That is not the way you should wrap up a role. You should thank Madam Toastmaster or whoever you're handing it off to, and perhaps come up with something a little bit more creative to tie it together. That was not something I was very proud of how that all came together. You may be wondering what feedback I got from the General Evaluator at the end of the meeting. Overall, she said I did a fantastic job with the role. However, in the first half of the grammarian report or the grammarian role, she said I could have given more examples of how to use the word of the day, which is bilious. That was great feedback from our General Evaluator, and I'll definitely try to do that in my next time taking on the grammarian role. I really hope this live example video of taking on the grammarian role was helpful to you. Let me know if it was beneficial. I plan to do a lot more videos of this style where I'm actually going to take my camera into my Toastmasters meeting and film myself doing various roles, and then I'll provide the feedback and the commentary in between those video clips, talking about what I did well and what I could do better. Because that is the thing, as a public speaker, you can always improve your speech, no matter how long you've been doing this. I've been a Toastmasters member for 7 years, and I can improve at every meeting. That is the great thing about the Toastmasters program. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was beneficial. Please leave me a comment, like the video, subscribe, turn on notifications, because I plan to provide a lot more fantastic video content to help make you a better communicator. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you are looking for a little bit of coaching help with your next speech, I am providing one-on-one evaluations. My contact email is in the video description. Reach out to me and let's discuss what that could look like.